established and have done so well. I'll just start by telling you a little bit about who Madalyn was, because obviously it was in her name. Then I'll introduce our wonderful keynote speaker, and finally I'll introduce the 3 different winners who will read from their fantastic winning pieces. So, Madalyn, who was she? Her association with Egypt and AUC began in 1966. She came to teach in the English Language Institute and met Thomas Lamont, and she was to marry a year later. After a period of teaching in Iowa and the birth of twin daughters, the Lamonts returned to AUC in 1972, where they remained for 9 years. This was a creative and fulfilling time for Madalyn, in which she taught composition in the freshman writing program and gave birth to their 3rd daughter. During these years, Madalyn made a lasting contribution to the social and intellectual life of the university community. She helped to organize an orientation program for new faculty about Egypt, a country she deeply loved. She also established a children's book collection at the library, instituted plays and celebrations for staff children, and encouraged a wide range of cultural activities on campus. Madalyn Lamont is remembered best, however, as a delightful and caring friend to many at AUC. A special blend of generosity, warmth, and sharp wit was shared freely with others. In a more private form of expression, she wrote poems reflecting a love of life fully experienced, so she was a poet too, like many of you. As a mother, wife, poet, and friend, Madalyn honoured her commitment to strong creative womanhood, and how appropriate that we have 3 female poets. She died in New York, sadly, in 1982, following a courageous struggle with cancer. So just before I introduce our exciting keynote speaker, I'd like to say a special thank you to Professor Mona Amna from the Department of Psychology, she's here, and Professor Kathleen Saville from the Department of Frustrating Composition, who were the awards committee panel this year. Okay, this brings us to our keynote speaker. So I'm delighted to introduce another fabulous creative woman, Professor Samia Mehrez, who's a professor of Arabic literature, was a professor here at the AUC from 1992 to 2021, and now is a professor emerita. She obtained her BA and MA degrees here, and completed her PhD at the University of California, Los Angeles in 1985. She taught at Cornell from 1984 to 1990 in the Department of Near Eastern Studies before joining the AUC. She then joined AUC's Center for Arabic Studies, later the Department of Arabic and Islamic Civilizations, and taught there until 2021, where she is currently professor emerita. She's the founding director of the Center for Translation Studies at AUC, which operated from 2009 to 2020. She's published widely in the fields of modern Arabic literature, post-colonial literature, translation studies, gender studies, and cultural studies. She's the author of Egyptian history and fiction, essays on Nabi Mahfouz, Samana Ibrahim, and Gamal Khufani, Egypt's cultural wars, politics and practice, and Ibrahim Nabi of a later Islamic. She has also edited the anthologies The Literary Atlas of Cairo and The Literary Life of Cairo, in which she translated numerous Egyptian writers. She is the editor of Translating Egypt's Revolution, The Language of Tahrir, and In the Shoes of the Other, Interdisciplinary Essays in Translation Studies from Cairo. She's translated into English Mona Prince's memoir of Egypt's January 2011 uprising entitled Ismi Thawra, Revolution is My Name. Her first novel in Arabic, Nadia's Empire, was published recently. She held her first art exhibition at the AUC's Balaki Gallery in Tahrir in 2022. In 2025, she published a book called SamBoozies, An Aesthetics of Junk, based on the exhibition which she was speaking at today. Absolute delight to welcome Professor.
I also want student at AUC. In fact, Tom Lamont has always been a huge inspiration to me. He too was a poet, as you mentioned, and they were just a lovely couple to see on campus with their children. I want to congratulate the awardees. We have three very creative women who are going to share the award today. Naya and Renan and Minan, all very special names. So bravo and congratulations. Maybe now we can get down to business. I'm here to share with you something, given the time constraints, about my latest book, which was published after, or was inspired really, by the exhibition that I held in the Felki Gallery on the Tahrir campus in 2022. The book is titled, like the exhibition, it is titled SamBoozies and Aesthetics of Jam. It is not necessarily an art book, by the way, because I'm not an artist, right? I'm an academic. Nor is it an academic book. Rather, it's a book of stories. And so I think it's appropriate for this context, really, where we're speaking about stories and creativity, that it be the focus of my talk today. But I would also like to say that it's hugely influenced by my career, of course, as an academic. So there's no getting away from that. And it's a book really, as I said, of stories, but it also tries to interconnect several fields: junk art, urban sociology, cultural history, as well as my personal experience and trajectory. The book, at a certain level, is about my relationship to AUC. So it's about AUC, to a certain degree, inspired by it, and by my experience at AUC. And I want to explain why and how. Maybe you can. This, by the way, was the title of the exhibition inside the gallery, as you can see on the screen. So let me begin, therefore, with talking through this. Does anybody recognize this building? No, you were probably not even born then. This is the old building in downtown Tahrir campus. This building was demolished in 2009, 2010, in order to make room for a new building that sat right adjacent to it in the garden. It wasn't a garden, they were tennis courts actually. And because it's so Stalinist and gray and drab, the university assigned the AUC students in the art department then to actually put together a collective installation of bottles in order to mask, camouflage the rear facade of the building, because there was a new building that came up and all they could see is this concrete. So the students painted hundreds of bottles, and they were very colorful, pink and orange and blue and green and purple, etc. And they were all lined up on the rear facade at every floor. And so it sort of gave it a different kind of life, if you would, this drab building. When the new building behind it came out, which is called New Felki now, used to be called New Felki when they coexisted, boxes, they were going to the garbage. And I selected some colors, and I considered that at that moment that I was really taking a piece of the campus, the old campus, where I did my undergraduate work, where I taught, where all of the memories, the friendships happened, that I was taking part of this campus with me, taking it home. And that's what I did. So I did take it home. I took the buttons and I put them in my home main sofa. So that was, highly privileged position overlooking the sea. And they've been sitting there until the day that prior to me. So a good 15 years, these 8 buttons sat at the windows. In the meantime, and it wasn't, by the way, a coincidence that I should be interested in picking up these books. Many of us hoard books in all Egyptian households. You will find empty bottles of liquor, of perfume, whatever, but people hoard books. So it's not a coincidence that I should have picked up the bottles that I took to my soul. And in the meantime, I was hoarding bottles as well. So I had plenty of bottles at home. And I had just finished writing a book, and I wanted to work with my hands a little before launching into another sort of writing project. So I said, okay, let me try and do something with these bottles that I've been hoarding. I'm not going to paint them because I have enough painted ones. I need to do something else. What else might I do with them to decorate my kitchen cabinet? And that's all I wanted, for them to sit on top of my kitchen cabinet. All right, so if you're going to put them in the kitchen, they need to be light, not too elaborate, humorous maybe, funny, engaging. All right. So I told myself, okay, you are going to dress up these books. Now when I say dress up, you have to be someone who knows how to dress up something. And of course I was calling on a lifetime of cumulative skills in sewing, knitting, upcycling, carpentry, painting. So it wasn't that I was working back. I was really putting to use skills that I already had since my childhood and continue to sort of call upon in different projects. And so that's what I did. I said, okay, I'm going to dress them up and I'm going to make characters out of them. And I will put them in my kitchen. And so this is the installation. Let me just go back here and say that these guys, as an installation in the exhibition, were titled Demolition Survivors, because they are buttons that survived the demolition of the Velvet building. These I call the first generation. And as you can see, they are caricatures, and they're dressed up in my personal. I hoard everything. And there's a good reason why I do that as well, because I'm too small for any size I buy. So I always have textiles that from alterations. Leggings are too long for me, sleeves are too long for me. Things always need to be taken in, etc. And I always request that I take the material because I know that I can put it to use. So I've made pouches, sling bags, shawls sometimes when I have enough material with all of this leftover stuff. My son is also a hoarder, just like me. We just watched me do this all my life, and so is my mother. So I was working with a huge amount of junk that is very well organized, by the way, in different containers. know exactly where to go in order to find my textiles, my buttons, my duty-free sleeve, bottle sleeves, you know, when you're shopping in airports, they give you these sleeves. I save everything. It's a bit crazy. That's what I do. Anyway, so these caricatures, they're not characters yet, are dressed in all of this junk that is in my home. It's all personal junk, all right? But then they rebel against their livelihood, and they begin to take on lives of their own, and they become characters. And so, these two, for example, are called Drink Like an Egyptian. And, because of their stature and royalty, they are actually wearing very expensive material from an old and antique vintage Indian sari. So they had to be given that royal stature, even in their making. This one is called The Photographer. And the photographer, because once I started making these caricatures that become characters, I was posting them also on Facebook, and my friends were therefore encouraging me, cheering me on, but also challenging me to make certain characters or certain personas. This one was a challenge by my friend Lamont, the veteran photographer, who actually gave a lecture here for Lamont some years ago. She said, make us a photographer. So I did. Some of it was junk from my own junk, and the rest is from my son's. That thing is the nozzle of a hose on the camera. The camera is made of a matchbox, a large matchbox. And the zoom lens actually zooms in and out. So during the exhibition, people were not supposed to touch these figurines because, they fall apart. They're very fragile, actually. But as you can see, I mean, she looks happy-go-lucky, but she's also got a noose around her neck. And the idea was to speak to the nature of this profession of photographer, that it's not all bright and beautiful. We've lost so many and continue to lose photojournalists in wars, especially in the genocidal war against Gaza, that is unprecedented in numbers of losses that have occurred. This one is called Madame Fifet. Madame Fifet, chez le coiffeur. She is inspired. I want, Nina, if I may ask you to stop me.
Okay,
Because
sure.
I can go on forever. And I don't want to do that. I can reduce the number of examples. I'm a smoker, you can tell from my voice. And so I decided I would integrate my filters into the artwork. So many of these figurines actually wear and use cigarette filters in different ways. In this instance, the entire character was inspired by the filter itself. When you hold it horizontally, and because of its size, it looked like a hair curler. Hair curlers that women use at hairdresser in salons. And so I decided, okay, let me try and glue it to the ping pong ball. The only thing I bought for these figurines was the ping pong balls that are going to become their heads. So I glued it, and it looked like a bourgeois woman's head. Concurrently, I have a friend who was posting, this was just after COVID, a friend whose name is Sharbatly, who was posting vignettes on Facebook that were called Madame Fifet. And it was a satirical pieces about bourgeois women in Samia. And as I continued to work on the head, I could see that Madame Fifet, the that was called Madame Fifette chez le coiffeur. And so it all fit very nicely together. She also is wearing very expensive props, by the way. The lipstick and the perfume bottle. And she's got glue for her hair extensions. She's wearing hair dye gloves as her dress. So, it all sort of comes together that way. This is another take on, bourgeois practices at the beach, how things have to look and sort of go together and match, etc. So it's a sort of satire again, and it's called Fun in the Sun. This is you. She has grade, and her books are empty, and so again it's a sort of a satirical rendition of The Graduate, and it's called The Graduate. It's also about a pipe. Who is this? The Sit, and it's called The Sit. Our diva, singer. This one is Sharbatly. Sharbatly is a very important nationalist figure, leader of the 1919 revolution, who was also very important during the 2011 uprising, because that's where the demonstrators started before they overtook the Hassan bridge. They were at the foot of his statue. Now the statue, he has his hand raised up like this, calling on the Egyptians to rise in revolt. Here, Sharbatly has a kerosene bottle and a lighter. And the rendition again is satirical, and it's called Mehrez. This is he did call you to rise, and you never did. So he may want as well set you on fire. This is another national symbol, very lofty nationalist symbol. Egypt's awakening is a sumptuous statue in Giza by Egypt's leading modernist sculptor, It's a huge statue. And this again is a satirical rendition of that nationalist lofty symbol. The statue is of a peasant woman who has her hand on the head of the Sphinx. And it sort of joins, therefore, modern Egypt and ancient Egypt, looking forward into the future. And here you can see a very playful rendition of the statue and the relationship between the peasant woman and the Sphinx who is winking. You see that he's winking? This is I'm not a soccer fan, but I love him as well. And I love him especially because he interacts with his daughters on the soccer field. He had not, I think his second girl was still a baby when I made these. But, so as you can see, each of these figurines has a story behind it. And that's why I say that it's a book of stories. Every single thing they are wearing, every single thing they are holding is archived in the book, with dates, where it was bought, who used it, where it came from, etc., etc. So there are stories within stories within stories throughout the book. This one I made, of course, after Hassan, and it's called All Eyes on Hassan. Doesn't need explanation. This one is Elizabeth, Lilibet, and it's called Bye Bye Lilibet, and it was right after happening now. This one is, this is the Statue of Liberty, of course, and it's called Here's to Freedom. Again, esoteric take on this statue that is supposed to be a symbol for human rights and sits at the entrance of the new world that was supposed to welcome all of these immigrants coming to the United States. These are
The Beatles.
exactly, and I realized that many of the younger generation had never seen the cover of the album. So I had to write help on that so that, young people like yourselves will know that they are the Beatles. They are iconic enough not to have faces. Note, of course, that the boxes suddenly have arms. And this is something that I learned how to do as I developed new tools to work on these. This is another rendition of the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They're wearing kitchen scrubs. And this one is Elvis Presley. Exactly. So, and the book therefore includes stories about all of the traditional stuff.
No, of course not, but I think to make sure we have enough time for just never.
So I'm going to just, this is me, but I won't stop here. I'm going to stop here. This is Fidel Azul, my mentor and colleague and friend. Fidel had come to the exhibition and she brought me cuttings from her mother's hand-embroidered vest. And she gave it to me and said, maybe you can use this for your project. So I decided to give her back the cuttings that she gave me. And so, if you know Fidel, I think she really looks like it. And she's got all of the characteristics that many of us know about Fidel, being at once angelic, but also terribly firm and frightening, which us all to get work done, and everything has to be done on time. And she is therefore wearing cuttings from that bedspread, and she's carrying in sacks. The sacks are made from toilet paper rolls that we all throw out. If you crush them on one side, they make a lovely form, and if you paint them, they have a beautiful texture that makes them look like leather. She's carrying, of course, everything that is her life. Her books, her translations, our theses, all of the theses that she has supervised, and most importantly, all of the angry letters that she sends to the AUC. And so I will end with this, and hope that your entries today being celebrated will take you places very far.
Thank you so much.
Because this project, people have asked me, have you stopped making stories? And I want to say no, they've led me to something else. And this is the something else. I have a new exhibition in Tahrir on the 2nd of April, and it is titled Anna, Conversations with AI. And it is again based primarily on this material, but with a multimedia aspect to it. So please come if you have the time. I'm going to leave the slides right.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause. And so now, with no further ado, we're going to hear from our three winners. And I'll begin with Nina. Congratulations for winning third prize for the wonderful short story, My Grandfather's on which he would always sit. It was big and sturdy, and it supported his back. It sat in the corner of his living room, and to its right stood a large set of metal drawers. If you thought about something long enough, it would probably materialize inside one of those drawers, if you hadn't already thought of it and put it there yourself. It hosted a specific type of chewy candy, which he would hand out to us every time we used it. And in the top drawer, he kept a copy of a short story I wrote in the fourth grade, which won me second place in a school competition. He would bring it out every once in a while, and we would take turns reading it. I never told him how I found such profound love between those pages, how the pristine condition he kept them in throughout the years was the kindest proof that somebody sees me. He had an apartment near the beach, which hosted a plethora of memories that still give my heart a glow, that taught me what it means to live and to love. As our family grew, the apartment grew with it. Whenever a neighbor would put theirs up for sale, he'd buy it and expand his own, ensuring each one of us had room to be left home. I got my love and attachment to my family from him. He had an armchair in that house too, and an unlimited supply of chewy candy. We'd gather around him in the salty breeze of the balcony as he told us stories from his childhood, or gave us riddles to solve. He told the best jokes too. I still remember the one about the black and white horse. 2 years ago, when my grandfather got sick, his armchair kept growing around his fragile body. With each month that passed, the corner where he sat got quieter, and we started longing for the sound of his vibrant voice. The warmth he radiated no longer had the strength to extend past the arms of his chair, and the room turned freezing cold. Fear seemed out of place inside the walls of his house, but it had become a regular guest. A guest that sat silently between us, a guest who took an oath not to acknowledge. As if ignoring such a resilient visitor could make him go away, as if he was not here to stay for as long as God intended. So we lived our life like we normally did, like the constant hospital visits and the oxygen tank next to the chair had no significant meaning. But reality didn't allow us to keep the roots going forever. Sometimes life will grab you by the collar and force you to look into its cold, unforgiving eyes. It will punish you for daring to ignore the burdens it throws at you, and it will not let you be until you repent. During one of the weekends we spent with my grandparents, my sisters and I stayed up with my cousins in the room they dedicated to us. We were loud as we always are, laughing and bantering and blasting our music like it was 1 in the morning. Until suddenly, we heard a yell that had the capacity to change everything. He is not responding to me. He is not responding to me. My grandmother screamed in panic from their bedroom, and I could almost hear the hands of the clock above the door frame come to screeching halt. Every cell in my body compelled me to move, to run out of the room and see what's happening for myself, to maybe find out that there was some misunderstanding. But no amount of screaming inside my head succeeded in unfreezing my legs, and I sat there helplessly covering my ears. He is still breathing, but is unresponsive. My cousin, who was somehow able to leave the room, informed us when he came back. They taken him to the hospital. The chaos that erupted in the minutes that followed had the power to make me spit my heart straight onto the floor. My grandmother trying to get the cousin to wake up. My mother and aunts frantically calling me from hospital to see which of them would take him in, while rushing to their dress. My sister squeezing my hand too tight as she cried, and shivering whispers of prayer filling up the room and sharply hitting my face. It was all a blur, but it was an excruciating, agonizing blur that went on to the rest inside my brain. In that moment, and as they left the hospital and we waited for a call, fear was no longer an unwanted guest. It was violent intruder. It held all of us by the throat and forced us to envision the worst possible outcome. I saw a world where my grandfather didn't exist, where I had to always walk into his living room to an empty armchair. I saw a life where the comfort and peace of his being was no longer a solace, no longer an integral part of life I could take for granted. I saw family gatherings that would forever be incomplete. I saw milestones he wouldn't be a part of. Fear was merciless, and he made me face above everything he was against it, a reality I didn't think was possible. But in that moment, it was possible. In fact, it was looming in the distance, and I could no longer pretend I couldn't see it. Fear had defeated me. It brought me to my knees and had come to look. My grandfather turned out to be okay that day, and for a few months, we had the privilege of learning to accommodate fear, unwanted as he was. And fear gently taught us that one day, our grandfather would be ready to give up his armchair, that we would be ready. Thank you so much. It's my absolute delight to now award the second prize to Mahmoud for her magnificent poem, Brown Leather Bound Journal, which is going to come through to you.
my piece, I'd like to thank all my supportive friends and family who are here and not here today. And a special thank you to my dear sister, Noreen Mahmoud, the person whom I owe my passion for poetry to. Every word, every line is embedded with gratitude for you. Brown leather-bound journal. It was a memorable autumn, the first time I bore my soul to someone. In our brown leather-bound journal, like a reluctant spider, weaving, always weaving. I wrote and wrote and wrote, nonsense, dipped in blue icing, covered in colorful sprinkles. They read and read and read. I was on a quest for an outlet. I searched in the music, flooding my ears, in the tears of white wine on my tongue, only to find the brown leather-bound journal and your onyx eyes waiting, always waiting. Winter came too soon, whisking us away in rain and crochet, purple, yellow, blue, I loved you too. Winter came again, bearing the chill of your silence and absence of your warm embrace, your affections withering, always withering. Spring emerged, a season of severing. In the same room, yet different planets, shared glances were cast as alone. My soul undone, your love gone. Summer at last, a solace of sobriety. I wrote and wrote and wrote in another journal about another life, once cherished, now an anecdote. My heart weathering, always weathering. Thank you.
Graduate scholarship at ABC, and she is studying political science with a minor in Arabic writing and reporting. She says that she's not a poet nor a writer, and that this was one of her first experiences with poetry, which is amazing to hear it. She had initially written it for an internship, but it came easily because she was writing about her own unique life experiences. So congratulations.
Relate to you in some way with the SamBoozies. My family and I have a few of our own, but it doesn't look the same as yours. Ours is mostly old alcohol bottles that turn into containers that hold olive oil back home. Okay, so this is my poem called The Sound of Checkpoint, and it goes like this. Footsteps, not rushing, not free. Measured, heavy, like rain that knows it will never leave. Metal plates, turnstiles groaning, one body at a time. A voice cracks through static, Hebrew, sharp, lingering in the air. Arabic, softer. English, clipped. The tone always clearer than the words. Beats, low ones that mean you pass, high ones that mean you don't. ID cards click in the reader like teeth chattering in the book. And then, life, slipping through the cracks. A child laughing, a bird winging overhead. At the exit, the chorus begins. Taxi, taxi, taxi. Again and again and again. A rhythm almost like music, almost like freedom. But even when you walk away, the sounds follow. The turnstile in your chest, the beats in your bones. The voice in a language you don't speak, still ringing in your ears. Thank you so much.